Hello, and welcome to the Josh Brown Podcast. With over 40 years of combined financial planning experience serving high net worth clients, we will discuss our favorite topics, concepts, and stories. Hello, welcome back to the Josh Brown Podcast. I'm Deven Joss, and today we have Dan Joss. I took his line. Today we will be talking about debt management, how we help clients reduce debt, and just an overall conversation on what debt is and how we should think of it. So, you want to start her off?
Sure, let's go.
All right.
Well, one of the first things we do when we meet with new clients is see where they're at with all of their finances.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll prepare a net worth statement, which shows assets and liabilities, and how much net worth they have, and then see if they're happy with that, where they're at, or where they want to improve. And many times where they want to improve is the reduction of debt.
Mm-hmm.
Most clients, most people that I've helped want to have their mortgage paid off at or near retirement, either just before or within a few years after retirement, because they don't like having to make the mortgage payment, or they don't think they'll like having to make the mortgage payment while they're in retirement and they're not earning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an easy one. That's kind of a low cost, arguably some people say it's a good debt, the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there's good or bad, but better or worse debt. But some clients come to us and they have a real need because they have several lines of credit with balances. So balance a line or a loan against your 401k.
Mm-hmm.
We could help them get rid of that so that they could have the assets working for them again. A home equity line may have a balance on it in addition to the mortgage, and that's typically costlier, and it's a great thing to have, the ability to borrow,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily to carry a balance on your home equity line. And then credit cards or personal loans are always more expensive. And then, of course, we have many professional clients that have student loans that are in the process of paying those down.
Yeah. So we see these different types of credit card debts, car loans, mortgages, student loans. When does it make sense to get those loans? Or how can we think about that before making the purchase?
Well, what we like to do is develop a strategy to get rid of their debt.
Mm-hmm.
And then help them in making better decisions about debt going forward.
Yeah.
So is that what you're referring to? Is how do we think about debt?
Yeah.
If we don't have any yet,
Mm-hmm.
or if we had it and don't have it anymore. Ron Blue is an advisor for many years down in Atlanta. He's come up with some decisions or principles that we can kind of think through. The first one is, does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is borrowing for something a good thing to do? Does it make sense? And one of the ways he says it makes sense is if what you're borrowing to buy increases in value more than the cost of borrowing
Mm-hmm.
to make the purchase. And so the easy one is, like I mentioned earlier, a house.
Yeah.
A house will typically go up in value over time. And if you can afford the mortgage payment and you make payments on it, then the liability will reduce over time.
Whereas a car normally depreciates.
Sure.
And a car or a house could appreciate.
Well, but both of those would be considered secured debt, where arguably the asset could be sold
And pay
to
it
satisfy
off.
the liability. And so that's why some say that those are good debt.
Yeah.
So arguably a house and a mortgage, to purchase a house, a mortgage is usually required because they're so expensive. You could probably buy a car without any debt, and many hundreds of thousands of people do. They either buy an inexpensive car, like my partner. Her guidance to her children was, we're going to find a car that we can pay cash for. Where you and I did it a little differently. We either help you on it, or you save up to buy an amount or a small family loan, but not a bank loan that is typically more expensive. So both of those are ways to think about it. Does it make sense, and will it appreciate? Another reason to have good debt, if that's good debt, would be student loan. I'm going to borrow to invest in the education so that my earning power is increased. Now that's it takes some thought, because you're not guaranteed a higher paying job just because you have a certain amount of education. But an education in many cases is a barrier to entry. You can't have these jobs if you don't have these degrees, but there are also millions of jobs out there that don't require degrees. So it's worth the decision and asking the question, does this make sense? And then second, from that, is there a guaranteed way to repay? Like we referenced in the first question, does it make sense? Can the asset be sold to pay for the liability? So a house can usually be sold to pay the liability, particularly if you put 20% down. Well, if you put less than that down, we have many clients who are military or veterans who can have access to a zero down loan. And in that case, we've helped people through not being able to sell the house to pay off the loan, because the property value can depreciate. Particularly, we saw this in 2007 and 2008, where house values declined. And of course, they declined much more quickly than we're making monthly payments on the liability. And so if you wanted to get out of that loan, you had to sell the house and come up with some extra money. And in that case, typically what we find is you become an unhappy, forced landlord. If you have to move, then you have to find a tenant to pay you the rent so that you can make the payment. And that is a position that's not necessarily to be sought after. So another asset we mentioned is typically if you put a good enough down payment on a car, you could sell that car. You could sell that boat. The second house you could sell. You can't necessarily, and this is what differs from the first one with regards to education loans. You can't sell that education you had and pay off the loan. You are stuck with the loan for education, and in fact, you can't bankrupt your way out of student loans either. So be very careful about student loans. Some things you buy with a credit card, you may be able to sell. Probably not for more than the loan, but certainly some cash. You could sell some clothes on your favorite media site. You could hold a garage sale to get some cash to make a payment towards liability. But the idea of thinking through, does this make sense, and can I sell the asset, are two great first questions.
Maybe going off on a little tangent, but back to credit card debt. Most of our clients pay their credit cards in full, but some people typically will want to open credit cards for the points, and I know you have strong feelings about that, but what do you think about that?
And this is where we get into what's the purpose of it. Does it make sense that I buy these on credit to get the points? It's like going to Vegas. Someone is paying for all that electricity and those fancy shiny lights, and it's always the losers that are paying for it. So if you get reward out of credit card balances, someone is paying for that, and it's the people that are paying 20+% interest on their outstanding balances that you're benefiting from. So I don't like necessarily the idea of, particularly if you're starting out, to get a credit card so that I can charge things and get points. Because if the bad times come along and you need credit for something, then you've dug a hole that is very difficult to get out of.
Yeah.
And we've helped clients that come to us get out of that hole and kind of say, let's keep the points for some other time after the good habits have been established.
Yeah.
I don't want to say slippery slope, but credit cards are used for some things that, because it's easy,
Mm-hmm.
or large purchases that I know I'll be able to pay in full at the end of the month, out of town.
Yeah.
We don't want to carry cash, things like that, but not what I would recommend is not normal living expenses.
Yeah.
And because, if you miss 2 or 3 months of interest, and I've seen some credit card balances in my career that you're paying, if you look at the total, you could be paying $3,000 or $4,000 a month in interest.
Wow.
That could buy a lot of plane tickets to somewhere if your points. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a tool. Credit cards are a tool to be used carefully. The next, so does it make sense? Is this a reasonable thing to use or to buy with borrowing? Is there a guaranteed way to repay? And then the third question or decision is just peace of heart and mind. These are some 3 simple questions in there. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Does what I'm doing violate any ethical or spiritual principle? And do I have peace in my heart about this purchase or decision? It's like, am I doing this because I need to have this,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to have it? Is doing this right or wrong?
Yeah.
Or does it feel good? Or, is it kind of like, you've heard the term retail therapy? Am I going shopping to make myself feel better? That's probably not a good reason to borrow to do that.
Yeah.
But just the idea of not just does it make common sense and can I afford it or pay it back, is this a healthy thing to do? Am I right in doing this? Because when you use a loan, and that's what a credit card is, a loan. In fact, there's this interesting article I read the other day about payday loans, and there's some big fees associated with payday loans.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm going to get paid next week. Can I borrow some of that money now? Sure. And you owe us another, 30% on top of that.
Yeah.
But the latest tweak on that is called something like earned pay now or something like that, where they automatically take their money back right after your check hits the bank. But it's not called a payday loan, but essentially it's a payday loan. But the people loaning are trying to differentiate that it's not a loan. And they're arguing because you've already earned the money, you just don't have it yet.
Yeah.
But it's a loan because you're taking money now and you're promising to give it back later. So whether it's earned or not, it doesn't matter. And there's high fees connected with it. And loans always have fees or interest connected with it. That's the purpose of it. You're taking from your future to use it now. So in doing that, it's worth asking the question, is this the right thing to do for me now? Knowing that it's great to have the ability to borrow if the need comes, but not to make that a normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because problems can happen in that promised interest can accumulate quickly. Mm-hmm. We'd rather be investing and have the gains accumulate to our benefit, not the debt accumulate to someone else's benefit.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. Is this the right thing? And why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
The fourth bullet we have here is if you're married, many marriages end in divorce. Most end in divorce because of money problems or infidelity problems. And so if money problems are part of it, a lot of that is is debt problems. One spouse may be more of a spender than the other. Well, obviously, if there's two, one will be more of a spender than the other. But talk through these things. And so together you can say, can we pay this back? Do we want to pay extra for the right to have something now instead of delaying a little bit? Is this a good thing? And is this good that we're in this together?
Yeah, it's definitely an important decision for a married couple to make, because that could have some effects on your future.
Well, yeah, it will probably have some. But we help clients that have problems in this area get out of those problems and then kind of set them on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah, most people, well, if they do have debt, and if they come into the office, then that's their main priority, I guess, is to somehow get that debt off and start saving for their future. But it's kind of hard to do when we've seen people have tons of credit cards, several auto loans, a high mortgage, and that's something that we can help with.
Yeah, we'll create a debt reduction plan and help clients develop the new habits to get them into the right spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be done quickly because of opportunities they haven't thought of, how to rearrange debt.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to cutting out the spending in other places and direct those funds toward the debt.
Yeah.
So that when and if retirement comes, they don't have credit card debt, they don't have a loan against their 401k, and some of those could cause problems in other ways. If you're laid off and you have a loan on your 401k, it's due.
Yeah.
So that could... A problem with debt is we make assumptions about the future that may not actually come true. And that's where we get into problems. When assumptions we make don't become reality.
Yeah.
So it's a toughie.
It's a tough
and we're
conversation.
Good at helping people think about it in different ways.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode. Share this with your friends. You can find more episodes on our website, but we are excited to have you listen to the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Joss Brown Podcast. If you'd like to see more episodes, visit our website at jossbrown.com.